Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Today is the first Monday of the month, which means it is Mystery Box Monday for me. So I have got my mystery box ready to go. Let's dive in and see what I can create with these mystery items. If you don't know what this project is, I ordered this kind of grab bag set of supplies from Peacecraft Love. And I don't know what's in this box. It's a pretty chunky, heavy box. I reach into it and I grab 3 items. They were trying to slip and slide out of there and peek through, but I tried to keep everything a secret as much as possible and grab 3 items. We will check these 3 items out and then make a project with them. So this first item is a metal stencil and pin pack from Stampendous, and it's designed to layer up and do some doodling and inking. And there are card bases in this set, so I definitely know the project I'm going to work on this time. Next up is these rosettes from Echo Park, and that reminds me of an old Mystery Box Monday where I got a rosette die from Tim Holtz, and I made a whole bunch of rosettes for a birthday party. So I will link you up to that if you want to check it out. Finally, we have this chipboard set, which is kind of a safari theme, very different than the rosettes. So we'll see how I can put all these together in a project. And I'm going to start with these rosettes to see if I can pop the upper layer off, which has a travel theme to it. And I don't have any reason to make travel themed cards. And luckily they come off very easily. And once the rosettes are plain, they remind me of flowers, which totally goes with the butterfly stencil set. So now I've got to figure out how to fit these safari themed chipboard pieces into a floral type project. Luckily, there are some buttons on there, which can make lovely centers for the chipboard. And thinking of flowers makes me think of spring, which makes me think of Easter, which reminds me that I need to get working on a set of Easter cards that I will be doing for a senior citizens meal program. And I know the lady who runs the meal program, and so she's going to tuck in Easter cards with their Easter meal that gets delivered. And so I am going to create Easter cards with these, and I've pulled out some twine to think about how I can spruce up these cards. And the next step is to work on the background for these cards. So what I think I'm going to do is spray through this stencil and not do the doodling that this stencil is intended, to make these cards a little easier and faster, and get a background going for my cards using that stencil. So I pull out some springy colors in yellow and purple, and the yellow is going to turn out to be a little more vibrant than I anticipated, and the camera actually makes it look pretty neon, which is not quite that bad, but we'll get to that. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my stencil down towards the bottom of the card, which will leave the top of the card to pull in a greeting. And we'll get to that as well. I am masking off the rest of the card. My stencil was a little bent, and because it's metal, I can just slightly bend it back, and then it'll sit flatter against the paper and work better as a spray stencil, because if I left it bent and popped up, it could seep under more. So I got that ready to go. And then after I sprayed it, I realized stencil stamping is a thing. Let's go ahead and make a second card with the stamping technique. And I use a towel to kind of sop up any squish that the ink does through the stencil so that I get a crisper image. And then with this stencil, I start, or with that yellow image, I start looking at it and see if I like it, if it's going to work with the rosettes. And I'm okay with the direction that we're going so far. So I will keep this. That stencil stamped worked pretty well. There's a few imperfect spots, but you know, I kind of like that imperfection a whole bunch. So I'm going to stick with that. And then I move on to the purple spray, and I mask it off a little bit differently this time because it's a little easier than trying to get that paper in just the right spot without it shifting around. So as I sprayed that, I realized that purple color is pretty light. I do go ahead and do the stencil stamping technique there with this one as well, even though I wasn't sure that the color was going to show up very well. And it is very muted, but I also had some yellow on my stencil still from that, and I really liked what happened with the mixing of the colors. Yellow and brown can sometimes, or yellow and purple can sometimes make brown, but I didn't have that happen. So I thought that was really pretty, very subtle, but very pretty. So because that was so subtle, I am going to go ahead and do some of this doodling anyway. I do want to tape my stencil down so I don't have to hold it the whole time in place. And I'm just going to outline each of these sections to help that pattern stand out a little bit more. And I do like how it came out. It's not something I would typically do. So that was actually kind of fun that I liked it. I did miss a spot, so I just had to realign my stencil. And it does have a printed marking on it so that you can line it up in the same direction each time if you do miss some of that. So that makes it a little easy for the doodling to go. So far I'm happy with the direction, and I'm continuing to work towards what I had planned in the beginning. I did realize that the button is a little small for just the center of the flower, so it needs another layer. Pull out a scratch piece of paper and a punch, and that gave me another layer to that. And then I'm like, okay, I just used one tiny piece of the chipboard. What else can I do with this chipboard? Because part of this project is to stretch your thoughts about supplies. And so I'm thinking that chipboard could be a layer behind my title or my sentiment piece, which I've decided to do on this little banner that come from a Spellbinders set that I did at Christmas time, whole series of the Spellbinder die set. It was a advent calendar set, and I really liked it. I really liked this piece, and I actually lost it for a little while. And I found it, and I was so glad that I found it. So along with a sentiment stamp set that happens to be from Tim Holtz, I did pick a couple of stamp sets out, and I liked the sizing and the font of this one the best. So that's why I went with that. So I pulled out a stamp alignment tool. I usually use my Misty, but I'm trying to show off this one a little bit more because it is cheaper, and that might be better for people's budgets. So this one is by We Are Memory Keepers, and you can take the lid completely off. You lined it back up on the pegs and put it back on there. It does have a little bit of wiggle to it because of that peg system, but I got a pretty good impression anyway until I smeared the ink, because what I didn't realize is that this scratch piece of paper is from a paper that has a coating on it, and that coating is making my ink not dry. So I'm going to heat set my ink with some clear embossing powder, and that worked out just fine, and I could move on. So I did have to totally re-die cut that piece before we got to this point and re-stamp it and then get it heat set. So another layer that I wanted to add to this card to spruce it up just a little bit more is inked edges. So I pulled out an ink cube. I believe that's a Gina K color, and I'm going to ink up these edges for just one more detail to the card to make it less simple. And I like that. And so we're continuing to go in the right direction. I'm going to start assembling everything. And then I do think about that bow, which I originally was going to put in the middle of the floret, rosette. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I'm thinking maybe it'll go up next to my sentiment. So I set it aside and I assemble my little banner piece here, which I tell you, if you haven't seen me unbox every single day of December of that advent calendar, you should go back. And those are just shorts, so you should be able to get through them pretty quickly. I had so much fun with that kit, and I will do it again this year. At any rate, I've got that sentiment ready to go, and I am layering it up on this chipboard piece. I did switch out the chipboard piece because that other one was red and the color wasn't working. But this chipboard piece, I'll show it here in a second, has a flower on it. So that's going to continue my idea of flowers, which helps these tie these products in together and makes them make a little more sense for the idea of Easter. And I had to offset my sentiment to get the flower to show, which then I'm going to cover it up a little bit with the bow, but it's there. It's subtle, but it's there, and it's leading towards my theme. So I'm going to call it working at this point. And I get everything glued down, and the idea is growing on me. So I make 2 more of those, and then this final rosette. The colors are just too 4th of July, and I cannot go there. So this is what I finalized with this project, was these 3 Easter cards with this set of supplies. And overall, I was able to make a travel theme, a safari theme, and very different styles work together to make Easter cards. So that is part of the fun of this silly Mystery Box Monday project, where we take different ideas and get our flexible thinking going to come up with some interesting projects. So I hope you enjoy this Mystery Box Monday as much as I do. It's just a fun project. And I will be back later this week with lots more videos, so do join me then. And until then, have an artful day.